So here we are again in God of War Ragnarok with what I think is the best build you can possibly obtain and deals some insane damage even to the hardest enemies in the game. But this build took me from getting absolutely manhandled by them to going almost flawless on them and stunlocking them into oblivion. This build is more of a deal as much damage as humanly possible without giving them a chance to defeat you type of build. I've seen similar builds to it, but not quite this exact one. But let me know down in the comments if you have any extra tips or builds you're using, if they differ from mine at all, so we can all bring our big brains together and see if we can make this even more powerful. First off, the armor. A lot of people like to mix and match different armor pieces, like throwing on Vidar's Bracers of Might and Vidar's Waist Armor isn't a bad idea either because of its damage buffs, but one of the things that we're going for in this build is cooldown and runic attack buffs, which the Berserker Armor does pretty well itself, but swapping out the waist piece can make it even more powerful. It's like you're non-stop rolling dice for each hit that Kratos deals to have a decent chance of cooldown. So the Berserker chest piece comes from the Barons of Alfheim, but won't be available until after completing the Secret of Sand's Favor to clear up the dust storm. And then if you trek on over to Midgard just north of the temple, you can fight the Berserker there to grab the Berserker gauntlets. The Berserker waist piece can be found in Niflheim's Mistfields after defeating the Berserker there, but we'll actually be using the Spiritual Belt, so that instead of restoring Relic cooldown on blocks, parries, and when we take damage, we can get Runic cooldown on whatever weapon you're dealing damage with. The Spiritual Belt comes from Brock and Sindri's shop after completing the Reckoning main mission. Hopefully now you know how to get the Berserker armor as well as the Spiritual Belt, so let's move on to the Relic. For our Relic, we're using my personal favorite, the Hilt of Hofud, which you get in your playthrough of the story after Creatures of Prophecy. The reason this relic is so crazy is because our armor increases our strength after using a relic, but also makes us get hit even harder. But with the time slowed down, that's not really an issue, and allows us to just melt through bosses that we're facing with as little hassle as humanly possible. But we'll add on some more gear to take advantage of this even more. I use the Furious Maul Axe attachment to become even stronger after defeating an enemy, but we'll swap this out with the Grip of the Nine Realms if I'm fighting a single boss like a Berserker to trigger a realm shift. Plus it also brings up your runic and cooldown. Hell's Touch is amazing because of how quick it is to use, which will help us out with some of our enchantments as well as Breath of Thamur if you need something a little more powerful. Pretty much the same goes for our Blades of Chaos. The Rampage of the Furies is pretty quick to use, but also powerful, and I looted it from the legendary chest in Vanaheim's Veneer Shrine. The Meteoric Slam is a pretty strong AoE type of high damage and elemental effect, which is helpful against bosses or even more so with multiple enemies. I got it from one of the Raven chests in Niflheim on the right hand side of the tree. The left hand side of that tree will contain armor while the right hand side contains runic attacks. For handles, the Cursed Empress handles aren't a terrible choice if you decide to adjust the build and not use runic attacks as frequently, which can be looted off of the Hateful, the Draugr at the Draugr Hole, and the Apple Core. But we're going with the Luminous Recovery handles found in the legendary chest in Nidavellir in Svartalfheim, so that whenever we smash or hold the triangle button, we have a moderate chance to get a Blessing of Cooldown. You can just keep mashing triangle and slam it down over and over again between shield bashes or something like that if you want to. I use it basically as a filler attack between runic attacks. You can craft the Mighty Olympic handle for your Draupnir spear at Brock and Sindri's shop to give us extra strength after detonating spears with triangle. And it says thrown spears, but it actually works on any spear that is stuck in an enemy. If you can detonate it with triangle, you have a chance for extra strength, which is pretty powerful with our light runic attack thrust of 1,000 soldiers, because after you use that, the enemy should be full of spears to detonate. You get it in a legendary chest in Helheim's Shipyard of the Fallen. And for our heavy runic attack, you can use the Finger of Ruin, but I'm not as specific on that one and generally switch it out every once in a while. For a while I was using the Onslaught shield and still do sometimes, but the Dauntless shield can be pretty powerful with its shield bash ability. The Rond I recommend using is the Rond of the Nine Realms that you get for finishing the 4 Vanaheim favor to give us even more realm shift ability. You could also opt to put in the Rond of Purification that you can find in the legendary chest while climbing the mountain towards the Well of Erd in Midgard towards the top of that climb. And using it on the Dauntless shield can be possibly just as powerful for this build. And then for our Spartan Rage, we're using Wrath to quickly charge down or stun lock enemies in a combo, and can be really helpful if you want to keep an enemy in one place between runic attacks or really anything. On Freya, we're going to use either Invoke the Storm or Cedar Exhale for our runic attack, and I tend to stick to the Sigil arrows because they tend to deal more damage, while Sonic inflicts more stun. It's also important to equip the Mardal sword for the bifrost that it inflicts, which will take us on over to our enchantments. The Seal of Runic Storm and Emblem of the Nine Realms are extremely important important for this build, as using Runic Attacks on 3 different weapons in quick succession will allow us to create an insane storm of bifrost with the Seal of Runic Storm, and can be found after defeating the boss in the Burning Skies favor in the Crater of Vanaheim. It's hard to see a build where this enchantment doesn't come in handy. And our damage is already increased after using relics, which ours is a realm shift, so why not make it even more crazy strong by packing on the Emblem of the 9 Realms that you get in this story. For the rest, I use Vanaheim and Asgard enchantments because our luck is pretty dang strong, so Vanaheim's set will help a lot since they're bound to at least to have fire element after spamming the Blades of Chaos, and Asgard's set to increase the damage of triangle attacks based on our cooldown, which our cooldown isn't too bad at all. The reason this Asgard set is so good is because of how we talked about it earlier. We already buffed the spear detonating ability, but now it'll be even stronger. If you use that detonation right after your light runic attack and then swap to your next weapon, to use that runic attack on our way to creating a storm of bifrost, you are dealing massive damage, as well as using the Blades of Chaos's triangle attack, the Flame Whiplash that we already went over with the handles, which can be an insanely powerful move. So this build is already incredibly powerful for multiple reasons. We have the Bifrost enchantment, which requires you to use runic attacks from 3 different weapons within a few seconds, as well as the Blades handle, Berserker Armor, and our waist piece that lets us cool down our runic and relic attacks incredibly quickly. A high cooldown is a great stat to have because of how powerful relics and runic attacks are, not to mention all the damage buffs that we have on top of our relic and runic attacks. So what I usually do when a fight starts is immediately unleash my 3 runic attacks, 1 on each weapon to start the Bifrost. Then I'll usually hit the enemy a couple of times with either my blades or spear before letting my relic go, then hit them another time or 2 before I use my rage to continue stun locking them, and holding L1 and triangle will usually lock the enemy in as well and stun them even more. And I'm doing this all while spamming square for arrows before using 3 more runic attacks to create Bifrost again, maybe not too long after using my relic to get some extra damage on them and make sure whatever boss I'm facing doesn't move. There's a ton of different ways you can use this build because of how many different things we have going for it, especially the cooldown effects. I'm not insanely creative, I'm sure you guys can create better ways to put this build to use, but no matter what you do, this build is incredibly strong. But thanks for watching, subscribe for more God of War Ragnarok videos, see ya.
Is that a frost troll? You won't be happy to see us.